Ladies and gentlemen, so nice to see you all in person. I think it was 3 years ago we were here in the same room, so that's quite a bit for a meeting in Brussels. We had enjoyment in Barcelona, hosted by Recat in between, but I think for the first in-person meeting of EARTO in Brussels, then it's very nice to see some of you. For those who are looking at us web streaming, I hope you're not part of the few who had COVID and could not come in. So we see the figures seems to be rising. So we're very happy still we could host today. We have a full agenda, so I won't stay on stage. I will call Antti. Antti Vasara is the CEO of VTT in Finland and also the EARTO president. So Antti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam, and also very warm welcome and good morning from me as well. It is truly a pleasure to see so many people here in the room, and also, of course, good morning to the people online. In today's event, we have something around 200 participants coming from 30 countries in Europe and beyond. So it shows there is interest in the topics that we are talking. Looking back at the couple of past years, so it has been, of course, incredibly challenging. And when we thought that the pandemic would be easing off, and then Russia attacked Ukraine and started a war there, that has led to an energy crisis. We see effects in the economy through inflation, and of course the world, in terms of geopolitics, is also getting all the time more and more complex. But at the same time, it then shows that also that how important research and innovation and the work that we and the whole all our partners are doing, the work matters very much for Europe. We have shown in the past years then that how we have been able to support in the efforts around the pandemic. Our competencies have been excellent in helping alleviate some of the troubles during pandemic. Our capabilities are used to bolster energy independence, defense capabilities, and also long-term research and innovation is at the heart of green transition, digital transition, and making Europe successful also in the future. If we look at EARTO's work in the last 3 years, we have been very busy in a positive way. We have, at the moment, 350 members across 32 countries, and despite pandemic and all these things, we have been growing. So we have welcomed 26 new members since 2019. So in that sense, then things have been moving forward. The real force of EARTO is then in the work that we do together, of course, inside our network, but also then, of course, outside with other partners. We have 7 very active working groups and 4 very active task forces. And if we count the people who have been contributed in this work, you could say that there's more than 800 experts that have contributed. So that's where then truly the expertise that we have in EARTO and EARTO's members comes to fruition. Thanks then to this great pool of expertise, we have been both present in and very visibly then showing that expertise in different contexts. We have published in the past 3 years more than 60 different position papers with which we can both of course express the position of RTOs, but also then maybe even more importantly, then contribute then to the policy work and to the work overall that is being done in innovation and industrial policies. And of course, this expertise is recognized at the EU level as well. We have been having EARTO experts in 11 different European high-level groups in the past 3 years. And they have covered a wide variety of topics from EU's Industrial Forum to Sustainable Finance Platform and many, many others. And of course, this work requires a lot of communication effort. So big thanks then, of course, to the EARTO office, but also to all members who communicate these things and also spread in many other ways than the word. Our motto is impact delivered. And if you look at the results, I think that we have been able to deliver impact, both in terms of then, of course, the work that all the RTOs have been doing, and I think that there's a general feeling then that the work through research and innovation has been very impactful, but also growing in importance. But also then the work that EARTO has been doing does show in then that Horizon Europe, how it has been set. The other programs like Digital Europe or space or defense programs have been set up. So many of the proposals have been picked there. And some of the topics that are on the top of the EU agenda at the moment, where we are also key actors in contributing to the work and actively pushing these topics, is, you could mention EU Chips Act, which is really crucial for both Europe's success, but also then in the sense that how we are leapfrogging in many areas then to the next generation technologies, and gaining leadership there, like new areas of microelectronics or quantum technology. The EU strategy on technology infrastructures is really crucial. I think that we have been also been able to make visibility to an area which has been perhaps a little bit invisible, but is a core part that how we scale science, things that goes in labs, then into industrial scale and commercial success. And these are obviously topics that we will be discussing today at the policy event. So first we'll hear from colleagues from the Commission on these types of topics. Then we have two of our member CEOs sharing views on topics that are related to European innovation agenda, and then discussing impact of RD&I investments and also preparing how to prepare for the midterm review of Horizon Europe. So all in all, a very busy and interesting agenda, which I truly hope that you will enjoy. But without further ado, I would like to introduce then our first speaker, and I have the great pleasure of introducing the Director General of DG GROW, Kerstin Jorna. Please, Kerstin.
Thank you, Antti, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here today, and I would like to thank EARTO also for contributing throughout all these years to our work, and to bring together the inventor's idea with the engineer's inventiveness, and to in the end provide solutions for different challenges that we see. In fact, to make it happen. And that's why I welcome very much also your baseline motto, which you just mentioned, Antti, impact delivered. Now, where we stand today, I could give a very bleak description. Energy prices soaring, war at our borders, the inflation going up, uncertainty, it's uncertainty everywhere. And whilst we have to address the situation, which is unprecedented, it was unprecedented for COVID, it was unprecedented now also for the war, and the energy crisis, we have to address those, but at the same time, we should not lose our compass. And as you know, the Commission is very active in pulling together. The Commission pulled together for buying, procuring, and producing the vaccines. Now we're looking at the energy, we're looking at how to support companies and citizens, and doing it together. The single market is the answer here. Nobody can, on their own, actually deal with these challenges. But as I said, it's equally important to keep the compass. And I must say, 2 weeks ago, I was at the Inno Energy Business Summit. Then yesterday, I was at the event of the European Business Angel Network, and you see the buzz is there. Despite the situation, people are upbeat, and there is a realization we need these solutions for clean energy, for storing energy, for biomaterials. We need them now. So I'm very happy that actually around everybody is still keeping the compass. What I want to say is that innovation and solutions, we must catalyze them into industry, into market uptake in business cases. And I will speak, I mean, I'm not research DG, so I will speak from where we come from, which is really the business case. And I'll speak about the scale up, and I'll speak about resilience and sustainability in our new business models. I'd like to take some examples where actually successful scale-up is happening, and we can learn a lot from these examples. To reach climate neutrality by 2050, we must transform our energy patterns. We must get to a 24-hour decarbonized and affordable energy system. And that requires renewable energy, for sure, sun, wind, waves maybe, but it also requires technologies to actually be able to process that energy, electrolyzers for hydrogen, heat pumps, batteries for storage. And then we have the users who will decarbonize the different industries, chemical, steel being only one, two examples. And they just want the energy 24 hours. They don't care how to do it. And if I look at that 24-hour scenario, there are still 2 or 3 not so clear spots. For example, intermittence. How do we deal with the baseload issue? And then there are all these different ideas, which is not only technology, but also other types of innovation, business innovation, around power purchase agreements, about understanding how green the grid really is, about understanding how charging, how do you transfer from one to the other? Where do we need new standards, like, for example, on hydrogen transporting and storing? Where are the pipelines? So all of this is part of the 24-hour scenario for energy, and we will need many more solutions to work on that. There is an example, the concentrated solar power plant in Spain, which has 600 movable mirrors producing over 20,000 megawatt every year, but it's linked to a steam turbine, and in that way they can actually ensure electricity also when the sun does not shine after sunset. There's also a pilot project in Germany to have electric cars, when not in use, re-inject power into the public energy grid through charging stations, and in that sense to offset during peak hours the baseload problem that I already mentioned. Another business case I see coming very strongly is biomaterials. Biomaterials is no longer a niche market. Today it's worth over 2 trillion, whilst providing over 18 million jobs. It's a great potential to add value and increase competitiveness and allow us to replace fossil-based materials by biomaterials. In the biomaterial area, I see the supply side well organized, given the current availability of and offer for materials, biomass. But there's more to be done to create really a market for the uptake through value chains and what we call the 14 ecosystems. Everything we do in DG Grow is really looking through the lens of the 14 biggest industrial ecosystems in the single market economy. And they range from tourism to mobility, to energy intensive, to renewables. And we need to organize the scale-up of innovation and of solutions in all these different ecosystems. And we need to understand when the scale-up is too slow, when technology is not coming, the solutions we need. We also need to understand how suppliers and bigger companies work together. We need to understand how the services component plays a role in the new business models energy as a service is one of these. So it's really understanding through the lens of these ecosystems and the business cases. Now, I want to speak about the industrial alliances. We have 8 alliances already, and they are growing. Industrial alliances bring together the whole supply and demand side around a given challenge. Batteries, hydrogen. We've just yesterday announced a new alliance on photovoltaic and solar. And because business case means there's a match between supply and demand. And that means that investments are also coming in. And if you look at the battery example, we started from 0. And today Europe is the second largest battery producing region behind China. We've overtaken the US. And we're expected in a couple of years to be self-sufficient as far as batteries is concerned. On hydrogen, the problem is similar in the sense that, again, you have the hen and egg problem. People don't invest in hydrogen production because they don't know if there will be the off-takers, and the potential off-takers, they don't invest in adjusting their production facilities because they don't know if there will be enough hydrogen. The Hydrogen Alliance, which has generated more than 1,000 actually industrial projects in the pipeline, is to synchronize and grow supply and demand at the same time. And that allows to scale also innovations around electrolyzer efficiency, around storage and transport of hydrogen. Of course, when you scale innovation, there's always the risk appetite of investors. And with new innovation, technology, you don't know whether it will work. And then often you don't know if there will be a market for it, my hydrogen example. So we are trying with our support to actually take away that risk. And by taking one part of the risk that the market will not take, we hope to come investors into this. And actually, it's quite successfully happening. We have, in particular, the European Innovation Council, different tools, and InvestEU program, which are really destined to take part of that market or technology risk that the market would not take. The EIC Pathfinder and Accelerator, for example, are complementary to InvestEU in that they support very early stage startup type of companies with the potential to create these new markets and these new solutions. The EIC Accelerator is designed for SMEs, including startups and small mid-caps who need financial support to bring their novel ideas, technologies to the market. Close to 80 of these companies were selected under the first 2022 EIC Accelerator cutoff for projects ranging from second life battery energy storage, organic photovoltaic models, to non-invasive heart surgery. Another important way to take away the risk is public procurement. The link between public demand, suppliers, and the actors of the innovation system is essential. What I said before is linking the innovation system with the companies. That's important. But there's also this important piece where we can actually link the innovation system with the public buyers. And we launched a few years ago a pilot project called Big Buyers, and using public procurement to foster innovation to support that twin transition. That initiative has allowed cities such as Oslo, Amsterdam, and Barcelona, I understand you were there the last time, to work together and develop innovative procurement approaches to reduce environmental impact of construction, for example. I want to say a last word on the single market, because that's the scale we really need for the solutions that we have. Traditionally, the single market is associated with policy of removing barriers to the free movement. And that work still is needed, in particular in areas such as services. But since for a couple of years, the single market has evolved beyond that. And single market also means availability of strategic inputs, of strategic products. They were vaccines, they were masks at a certain stage. But now we're looking at a broader range of products. We've looked at the different, of our different value chains. We've looked at the ecosystems to understand what strategic inputs we need. And Antti, you mentioned the CHIPS Act. This is one example of this new policy, and which really looks at solving the issue of availability of chips for our companies, the economy, in a way that is resilient and sustainable. Resilient also in the sense, if we don't get it from somewhere else, we'll be able to, at least some of it, be able to produce in Europe. And that availability of strategic inputs, you see it also underlying the new proposals on a Raw Materials Act, which we are working on for adoption somewhere at the end of spring next year. And here, again, we will need a lot of solutions around sustainable mining and around sustainable extraction up to restoration and recycling. The challenge is that if you want to recycle, which everybody wants, you need to understand how to refine. And today, refining is essentially taking place in China. And then I haven't spoken about the extraction yet. So that's a whole new policy, but it builds on single market availability of strategic inputs. We also proposed a single market emergency instrument, which has the function of keeping the single market working, even in terms of crisis. We don't know the next crisis, but we will have protocols and we will have a system to identify where joint action with member states has to take place. And then there's a third pan, and I'm asking you to also help us, which is about managing the single market. So it's barriers and strategic inputs, but it's also managing the single market. When the single market was invented, member states accepted it with the mantra of subsidiarity. The EU regulates and member states implement. But we were 12 at the time, 12 countries. Today we're 27. And the management of the single market becomes more complicated, also because the different administrations are, equipped in different ways. So we need to be better, and we can be better because there's technology now. And we must be better because the more we regulate products, like batteries, to be more sustainable, the more important it will be to produce them and expensive. So if we have non-compliant products coming into the single market, they kill the business case of the sustainable products. And we will have a huge initiative to actually work together the customs authorities and the single market, the market surveillance authorities. They don't at the moment. They don't even sometimes in their own member state. To make them work together. And the answer here is technology. Technology to create the data space, to create the trust between administrations, to create a common language, how you describe a product in these different languages, also regulatory. Customs code describes a product differently from our product regulation. So we need technology to come in here. And to improve the management of the single market and the way national authorities and administrations operate, I see this as a great challenge for us in the future, and I would be looking to your projects also to help us here. So, in conclusion, the situation is bleak, but there is still a lot of hope and a lot of solutions that are in the making, and we will come through that difficult decision, I'm convinced, if we keep our compass for green and digital transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And in terms of bringing hope to the bleak situation, you can count on RTOs to be your partners in there. Next up, then on the agenda, We will have Anna Panagopoulou from the Research and Innovation RTD, and Anna is the Director of European Research Area and Innovation. So please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Antti, and good morning to everybody. It's always a pleasure for me to be to these policy events of EARTO, and it's particular pleasure for me today because it's not just a policy event, but it is an event where you are going to give the prizes of EARTO, the awards. And I think whenever we have to celebrate great results from RTOs that would make a difference, and that it could bring in the market, I think is a great event and a great moment also for policymakers, for the Commission to be with you, and they share the thoughts about the latest policy developments, but also of how we can reinforce our collaboration that has been well established over the last years. I think Kerstin very clearly said that politically we have a compass, which is the green and digital transition. So she finished her speech like that. And I would like to repeat this because despite the difficulties that we face, we have always to keep in mind that we cannot change our vision over the years because of the difficulties, but maybe what we have to do to adapt the way that we are going to deliver our vision with new actions in order to address the challenges that we have. And we have many. Recently, I don't want to repeat them, you all know. And it's a pleasure for me also to come here with always something that I consider it is a positive agenda. Because when we speak about research and innovation in the way that is delivered in Europe, following the values and principles, the European values and principles, it can only be a positive agenda. And I strongly believe, and I hope all of you share the same views with me, that working on research and innovation, trying to bring the results and test the results through RTOs, through your work, and to bring them to the market, to bring them to the industry, to demonstrate their added value, it is a policy agenda which is going to deliver and to contribute to the challenges that we have today. Many sectors that they have been referred by Antti, by Kerstin, microchips, semiconductors, the area of energy, renewable energy, all the areas are critical for today. All the areas are important for the technological sovereignty and technological leadership of Europe. And in all these areas, RTOs could play an important role. I would like to update you a little bit on what we do in research and innovation in our policies, which I think is very relevant for your interest as well, and probably will give you some inspiration on how to continue your work. And I would like to structure my keynote speech in three main areas, around the three main political activities that we have in the DG. The first one is the European Research Area. So it's the new, revamped European Research Area that I hope that you all know by now. But certainly we collaborate a lot with EARTO on delivery of its actions. The second one is the new European Innovation Agenda. You are going to have a debate about that. And I have to say that I'm extremely happy that Commissioner Gabriel and Vice President Vestager, they managed to deliver this political agenda, which is a corporate initiative in the Commission. And I would like to mention that because it's not just about R&I, it's not just about technology infrastructure, it's not just about testing capabilities, it's about how we can develop an environment across Europe which will encourage and promote deep tech innovation. And the third point that I think, of course, you are always very interested is what happens with Horizon Europe today, how we are going to evaluate Horizon Europe, and what we are going to deliver in the few years to come. So starting with the European Research Area, a very ambitious political agenda, co-created, more or less, maybe you can argue that at the beginning stakeholder was not very much involved. I would like to say that we tried to co-create as much as we could with member states and stakeholders. And in this agenda, one of the main objectives of European Research Area is to promote innovation, to bring closer what research and innovation institutes are doing to the needs of the society, to the needs of the market, and to the needs of the business and to the industry. And there were 20 actions that have been agreed together with the member states on a basis of a council conclusion, but has been prepared also with the stakeholders. And there are specific actions that they are making this link between the R&I activities and the industry. And I would like in particular to mention the action which is related to industrial roadmap. I think it's very important for the work that we are doing, but also the action 12, which is related on the role of technology infrastructures in particular delivering the green and digital transition. But also the action 8, which is about research infrastructures, because of course 12 and 8, they have to work in synergy. So how overall technology infrastructures, research infrastructures could deliver the services that they are needed by the industry in order to test new technologies and to promote innovation. The last year, we have intensively worked with member states and stakeholders, first of all, to have the commitment on delivering, on doing the actual implementation of the actions. EARTO has been participating, thank you, Miriam, for that, in particular to those actions that are most relevant of your interest. Action 12 is one, Action 7 is another one. I hope I don't forget anything. And now we are at the stage to start delivering what we have put on the paper. Concerning Action 12, we do need to have a better definition, a better understanding of technology infrastructures and what we expect them to do. How complementing the services that provide for some research infrastructures, and how we can place them in the overall research and innovation ecosystem that we want to develop. And already we have seen, and we are very happy for that, that technology infrastructures and RTOs more general, they are delivering results in the context of technology and the research and innovation ecosystem. And we have seen that they could be actors, that they attract talents, that they are developing socioeconomic impact, and they are merit to be considered for financing at national and European level. So, although there is no identified area in the Horizon Europe program where it is said financing technology infrastructures, there are possibilities for financing, in particular under Pillar 2, and I'm sure that you're all aware what are the possibilities for technologies infrastructure to work in the context of mission, in the context of partnerships, in order to deliver their expected results. But this is not enough. I believe that in the context of the European research area discussions that we are having almost every month, and the work that we are going to be done in the context of the advisory group that is going to be established, we can advance the dialogue and the expectations and a more broader definition and acceptance of the technology infrastructures in the R&I ecosystem, in close collaboration, of course, with the work that is done in the context of the research infrastructures. So in this work, we are happy and we are very much willing to work with EARTO, and we are looking very much forward to your recommendations and your input. I have to say what Antti said. You have been instrumental when we were defining our policies with your positions papers, and this is something that we are very much welcome also in the future. But ERA is the big picture embedded in the treaty, and already we have the commitment from almost all member states to participate to all the actions, and we will be happy to report on the outcome of the overall ERA agenda, hopefully also with some key deliverables in the context of technology infrastructures. But the novelty or the new policy, the new baby of DG Research and Innovation, I would say, it is the new European Innovation Agenda. And maybe you could argue why we needed to have such an agenda today, and what is the added value from in addition to ERA. And there I would like to highlight that this new European Innovation Agenda is meant there to facilitate deep tech innovation in Europe, not exclusively. Disruptive innovation, socioeconomic innovation could be also considered, but to address the key challenges that we have in Europe. We want to be leadership, the leaders on new technologies. We need to attract more investments on research and innovation activities. We need to keep our companies, to scale them up. We need to use in a better way the experimentation facilities that we have in order to promote new innovations to the market and to the business. And we need to address the talents, the issue of talents, how we can retain and how we can invite more talents in Europe and to develop their entrepreneurial skills. And also we need to address the issue of innovation divide that still exists, the disruption of the European innovation ecosystem, where again, technology infrastructures, research infrastructures could play an important role. And with this spirit, we have delivered this new European innovation agenda, an agenda with 5 flagships that I just mentioned, and 25 actions, even more ambitious than the one of ERA, in the sense that many more and new actors have to be involved to deliver the outcome and the expected results. So, where I see your role? I certainly see your role in delivering the flagship on experimentation and test beds. I certainly see your role in the context of the regional innovation deep tech valleys. This is the concrete deliverables. So where we have the possibility to deliver concrete projects on key technologies, the ones that we all know by today, energy, food security, health, digital, AI, microchips, you all know these technologies. And to be able to work within a region and between the regions on 3-4 concrete projects and deliver the results. And we want, through this initiative, to leverage the budget that is available already at regional level. So, you have a role to play there. We have a role to play there as European Commission with Horizon Europe, but we expect also a whole of a governance approach from the regions and an inclusive approach so that all the actors in the innovation ecosystem, they will work together to deliver this flagship. And you are among those actors, and I'm really looking forward to your active participation to the delivery of this flagship. We talk a lot about the challenges that we have today, and we believe strongly, and Commissioner Gabriel, I think she's advocating a lot about that. One of the main challenges is the talents, and it's youth. And RTOs could play an important role there as well. So we need people that they have the skills to deliver these new technologies that we want. And these skills cannot be just research skills, cannot be just entrepreneurial skills, could be something in between. And we need also the talents that they are leaving Europe to go to other places like United States, so we need to keep them here. We need to create the conditions for them to stay here. We need to create the challenging jobs to keep them here. And we need to attract talents that they want to reach Europe to deliver, to contribute to our technological developments. So, again, I expect that you can play a role, and there will be a lot of actions where eventually you could be able to participate. Now I would like to move to the third part of our policy, which is Horizon Europe. I'm sure by now you're all aware about the availability of the budget, what we can offer, what we can deliver. Kerstin mentioned the European Innovation Council. So it was the first time we had 10 billion under Horizon Europe for innovation, and 10 billion for companies, to scale up companies, and of course also through the Pathfinder and the transition to give the possibility to basic research activities and actors to contribute to innovation, to the value chain. A lot of good results that we have there. We have the missions for the first time. We have the partnerships, the new policy about partnership. For the first time, 3 billion for the widening countries. And we have an ambitious ERA policy agenda. And of course, we have the standard budget about basic research that you know also very well. This is now the moment where the Commission has to do 3 main things. First, to prepare the strategic planning for the remaining part of the program. And through this strategic planning, we will address, of course, the missions. We assess the missions, and we'll consider whether new missions should be put in place, or whether we continue the missions that are already in place. We are going to look at the partnerships that we have put in place, and we are going to see what are the strategic priorities for the program from the years to come. The second exercise that we have to do is the interim evaluation of the program. As you know, we just started the program, but the cycle of the program is 7 years. We are somewhere in between, in the middle. It's now that we have to start the interim evaluation, which will help us, of course, to prepare the last phase of the program, but in particular, to consider how we are going to define FP10. And the third exercise that we have to do is the ex-post evaluation of 2020. It seems probably a bit late now, but this is the moment that we are finalizing the last projects of 2020, and it is a moment also that using the ex-post could inform the preparation of the Horizon Europe, of the FP10. And for all these exercises, in the spirit of co-creation and openness, we are going to consult member states and stakeholders. Now, the good news are that we are going to do it with one consolidated consultation. So we are not going to have 3 different consultations in parallel, but the idea is to launch in November, between November and February 2023, and consultation for stakeholders for all these 3 activities. And of course, you are very much welcome to participate through the consultation, but by positioning your papers, that I expect that you will position new papers on all these 3 exercises. What is the important thing? First of all, you can influence or you can propose what you see from your experience, both from the point of the implementation of the program, but also from the point of political priorities. And secondly, you could be able to engage with dialogue with the Commission. And I know you are very strong on that, and I'm looking forward to continue our discussions in this context. So, overall, I would like to thank you already for the excellent collaboration that we have established. I continue to believe that research and innovation activities agenda, it's a very positive agenda, which should cheer us in a difficult period. And I'm looking forward to listen to the announcement of the awards today, but also to continue our enhanced dialogue for the benefit of Europe, for the benefit of RTOs, and for the benefit of the citizens and our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. There were so many points that would be wonderful to discuss and so much relevant for us. But next up, we'll move then into discussion on deep tech innovation and industrial policy. It will be our colleague François Jacq, who is also Vice President of EARTO, but the CEO for our big French member CEA. Over to you, François.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you can. Yeah, that's fine. It's working. So, thank you. Very happy to be here today. First, I must probably ask for some forgiveness because I think there is a bit of overselling in the title of the presentation, but you'll see what I will be able to tackle from this very ambitious title, Deep Tech Innovation, Industrial Policy, and so on. Basically, my argument, I think, will be threefold. First one is that we are currently undergoing crisis, plural, and at a scale and in a proportion we never experienced, basically. There is something quite original, there is something new happening now. That's the first part. Second part is that to tackle that, we certainly have to think about innovation, about policy differently. And the third part of the argument is obviously that RTO are part of the solution under some specific condition. So I start, I hope, yes, it's working. All the previous speakers spoke about that. My contention is to show that there is something specific bringing all those crises together. So globalization, energy, climate, geostrategic. All those crises are intertangled, they are intertwined in a sense. There are some dependency between those crises, but something new is happening. Because if you just thinking of energy crisis, you could say, well, basically that's not new. In the 70s, we had that with the two oil shock and so on. If we are thinking of geostrategic crisis, you think of the Cold War, and that's it, we already experienced that. But that's clearly bringing all those things together. That is, we develop a lot through globalization in the past year, but we realize that now we are under some very strong dependencies, and that was shown during the COVID crisis with the mask, with the chips and so on. We are also having, at the same time, the energy and the climate crisis. Those are not the same, basically. Because if you're thinking of climate, clearly we have to preserve the planet and so on. If we are thinking of energy, now what people want, it's not just only carbon-free energy, but it's also available and affordable energy. And that's not exactly the same. And you have to bring all those challenges together. And basically, when you are putting at the same time the fact that we lost in terms of control over supply chains, in terms of the globalization crisis, and at the same time that we have the kind of conflicts we have in Europe, in Ukraine, but also the tension with China and so on, you see the complexity. So, just some example already mentioned, mask, metals, chips, and so on. Maybe one small precaution I can take is what I will say is not meaning that we are looking for some isolation of Europe. When I say that we have to tackle all those crises together, it means that we have to have a proper roadmap in terms of being sure where are the strategic points and how we can control those strategic points. It doesn't mean that we have to isolate Europe in the future. So, two examples related to energy. Photovoltaics. You all know that we are importing our solar cells. And this is, I think, a very good illustration of the kind of divide you have between two kinds of policies. On the one hand, we want to decarbonize, we want to have carbon-free energy, so we do solar. But on the other hand, we should have thought in terms of industrial policy, because we should have anticipated that we would have to import it. That is, in a sense, when we are freeing ourselves from gas, for instance, because of low carbon, if we are at the same time creating other dependencies, that is, for instance, being forced to import the solar cells from other countries, I think we are not doing properly our job. What we have to do is bring together innovation policy, industrial policy, and also climate policy. That's basically the first part of my case. I skip the cybersecurity, but that will be the same in the coming years. I skip that too. Basically, all this context of crisis is also driven by things that are related to the crisis, but are not exactly the crisis. We are always speaking of twin transition. I think there are probably not two, but three, because you've got obviously energy, climate, and so on. You've got obviously IT, and IT not just only because, for instance, we have to import chips, but also because IT are profoundly changing our ways of lives, the ways our societies are working, think just of social networks and things of that kind. But at the same time, I would add health. Because if you are thinking in terms of aging population, if you are thinking in terms of what is the health system, the healthcare system currently in our Western country, you see that we also have a major stake in that case. So that means that we have the crisis. At the same time, we have three undergoing transformation not exactly equated to the crisis, because one way or another we have to cope with digital transition, one way or another we have to cope with climate, and one way or another we have to cope with health. So all that makes, in my opinion, that what we are experiencing now is not exactly what we had in the past. And that's just why we need innovation, we need deep tech, but we do not have to think in terms of a silver bullet. There is no single purpose solution, no single technology which would be obvious and which would solve all problems. We have to bring all the technology together. And for instance, if I'm taking again the case of energy, it's not sufficient to have, let's say, a good technology for photovoltaics, a good technology for nuclear, a good technology for hydrogen, or whatever. We need an integrated version of the energy system so that we see how it works together. Because if at the end of the day, we have to bring together renewable energy, nuclear, small modular reactors, we will need storage, we will need ways of running the grid, and so on, and implementing smart grid. It won't be so easy. And also at the end of the day, it's not purely technological, it's also related to social practices. If we are not able to embark our fellow citizens in this transformation in terms of changing their practice, changing their ways of life, we will fail. Basically, we will fail. That's just why we are at a crossroad. And so, to tackle that, I think what we need is clearly a convergence between science, technology, market, policies, and so on. And here is the second part or third part of my case, that is RTO are exactly done for that. That is, in my view, what is a characterization of RTO is clearly the fact that they are able to bring together all those dimensions to make it converge around the RTO, a kind of plug-in. You know, you can plug market, you can plug users, you can plug policy, and so on, to find proper solutions. So I do not want to overstate my case. That is, we still have progress to make as RTO, and I think one of the progress we have to make is certainly to better take into account this question of ways of life and social practices and the way we are able to embark the citizens. So this is basically what we can do as RTO, why it is important to have this approach in terms of deep tech, in terms of innovation, in terms of convergence of policies. And here are some illustrations. I must say I could have taken many others, but my important point in that case is clearly that this need of deep tech innovation, and also the fact that there is no ready-made solution. That is, there is no linear model having, let's say, technologies, science waiting on the shelves. We have to do something much more complex, and that's what RTO are for. This was very well illustrated by the recent report of OECD. We worked together, OECD and EARTO, on this report. And I think the fact that we need those RTO in terms of being able to promote a seamless approach of innovation, of bringing science and technology in our society, is certainly a case strongly made in the conclusion of the report. And I really want to underline that, because that's not, purely a declaration. We have some proof of that, be it in the field of health, be it in the field of energy, and so on. And I think the fact that we are able to work on the various dimensions, that is from lab to fab, that's the basics, but also from our activities to startup, from our activities to industrial and economic activities, and also, I think, from technology to society, is clearly something which shows what is the added value. Oh, I'm too late. What is the added value of RTO? So, to sum up and to conclude, all that is very well. We have an excellent tool with RTO. We have quite somber time, as was said, quite big time, but we have some hope in terms of how we can manage the transition. But to succeed, there are some conditions. I think one of the first is certainly that we are now absolutely convinced that we need to work on European dimension. That's not purely an issue of the single market. That is a way of working together between technological scientific actors in Europe, between RTO, and we have to invent new forms of partnerships and so on. What is currently discussed under the CHIPS Act is a good case in point. Having 3 RTOs working strongly together, that is, I think, something important. My second point is clearly that we have to get this articulation of policies. I took the example of energy and industrial policy, but we could have many more. That's true for health, that's true, and so we have to get this cross-sectoral approach between policies so that we have an holistic approach and we are able to provide the people, to provide the citizen, to provide the government with integrated solution. My third point is maybe a bit more parochial in a sense, that is, RTO are excellent tools, but they have to be helped in a sense. And to have RTO doing their job properly, we have to get some kind of level playing field. That is, our economic model has to be recognized. The fact that we need some resourcing and we need some funding for resourcing has also to be recognized. And I think that's, again, a prerequisite if we want to succeed. Everyone is saying that. For the time being, you know, we have great expectation, but at the same time, those expectations have to be transformed in some very practical, concrete realization. And I think that was also showed in the OECD report. And finally, and I think it will make the transition with the next speaker. Sorry, Antti, I'm doing your job. but anyway, I think all that, obviously, I spoke of ways of life, social practice, and so on, but we also need, obviously, technology and infrastructure. That's just why technological infrastructure are so important. The importance of scientific infrastructure has been recognized for many years in Europe. I think the issue of technological infrastructure is a bit more an object of discussion for the time being, but I think we absolutely need that because technological infrastructure, and Pia will speak about that, is part, let's say, of the wide spectrum of tools used by RTO to achieve their goals. But again, I think a very strange, complex, and difficult period, for sure, which implies, I think, this holistic view, this holistic approach of the crisis, the technology, the transformation. And in this overall framework, I think there is a major place for RTO. They showed that in the past, and if they are helped, if they are properly helped, I think the added value will be even more increased. So thank you for your attention.
You did an admirable job with a very broad topic, so thank you for that. And like you already introduced, Pia Sandvik, Sweden and RISE have been really advanced in thinking around technology infrastructure, so we have pleasure of having CEO of RISE and EARTO Treasurer Pia Sandvik. Now, please.
It's fantastic to listen to the former speakers. They have all played the ball for me to take the next step. The need for transition and transformation is huge. We need to share risk. We need to be able to test new solutions in order to do upscaling, industrialization, to get good solutions in place. That's what technology infrastructure is about. What is technology infrastructure? Antti said that we've been working with this at RISE for many years. They are actually innovation environments, I would say. But of course, technology is in the center of this. It's infrastructures where you can really test systems, puzzle systems, components, processes, products, to see that they will work in a controlled environment in order to be able to scale up and do the industrialization. That's a simple way to say it. The interesting thing is that we have seen a huge increased demand for these type of infrastructures. And I only have one simple idea about that. It's because the investments are too huge for every company to take themselves. So that's why they come to us RTOs and say, could you please, together with us, share risk and build the necessary infrastructures that we need in order to test our technologies, to ramp up time to market. That we have 130 of these type of infrastructures at RISE, and I'm not talking about a microscope. It's much larger than that. And the interesting thing that we have used in order to be able to get good models of this is that they have always been industrially driven. We need to know that there's a business out there or industries or even partnerships with many companies that are prepared to pay for use of these infrastructures. And that's really the interesting thing about building a new type of ecosystem, not just about technology development, about research. It's about creating a new ecosystem with research infrastructure, with technology infrastructure, in order to build an ecosystem where we can faster find the solutions that are needed. And we haven't had that in the way that we need to do now, because we are in a hurry. We need to find more sustainable solutions faster. And that's why it's so important to find a common strategy for technology infrastructures within Europe. It's not enough to do it in every country. We need to see what we can do together. That's why we need to work together. We need to map, because we have these infrastructures. As Jacq pointed out, we are doing this. We have them in all the RTOs all over Europe, but we don't know what we have together. We have to map the landscape to see what infrastructures are missing, do that together with industry, to see how do we need to do more investments in the ones we have, get everybody to understand the total TI infrastructure, the TI structure that we have. But also, of course, to be able to set a strategy to see what are the white spots where industry has needs and we haven't been there yet. Because then we can really know what type of capex investments we are actually need in the future. Because I would say that from the Swedish point of view, and I think my colleagues can say the same, from every country where we have RTOs, they will say that the need is there. So we think that it would be very good to have an advisory board, of course, overall, to be able to coordinate this. And we have also seen that if we work with infrastructures, TIs, that are in a value chain, then it's even better. And perhaps we don't, no, I'm sure, we don't need to have the value chain in each country. We can do it on a European level. Because normally you have technologies in all different parts of a value chain that needs to be verified. We have been talking about TIs for so many years, and now we have done so many things in quite a short time. I would say that 4 years ago, nobody talked about technology infrastructure. Today we hear Anna saying that it's part of the backbone of research and innovation. But we are not we are not yet there yet. We need to do more. We have worked together with JRC to set up, we presented a report to see how we can take the further steps to implement a EU strategy for technology infrastructure. And that was also one of the context when we had the French presidency on an event there, which was very good to sort of bring these up on the agenda. It's also important, even though I said that it's an ecosystem, that we really get the understanding of research infrastructure and technology infrastructure, because they are not the same. They don't have the same logic. That's why they need to be separated, even though they are part of the same ecosystem. So, in order to do that, we have also gathered quite a lot of the RTOs that now are working together with SIA of an upcoming coordinating support action for Horizon to see how we can do this. And that's very, very important to mobilize in that way we do. And I think that this CSA will actually give this broader knowledge about what TI actually is. And, of course, one key issue, the understanding of how the future European programs need to have this for doing the necessary investments and funding. It has to be established in the programs. But of course, it's important to create the ecosystem as well, to strengthen the collaboration between research infrastructures and technology infrastructures as well as increasing the visibility and accessibility. Now let's see if I've gone too fast. No? Twin transition, or even perhaps it's more than a twin transition. It's an overall transition. It's happening everywhere. But of course, it's important to also connect this to Action 12. And I think that's why we also see this increased demand of technology infrastructures, because the transformations are so huge. "20 concrete actions has been suggested in this. And now we have actually, with the member states represented in ERA, they paid off because they were as voted to keep Action 12 within the list of actions. So it's really high on the agenda now, and that's very, very important. I would say that there are two main roadmaps: the ERA Industrial Technology Roadmap and the technology infrastructures. And of course, we are waiting now that there will actually be a link between tech roadmap and tech infrastrategy. And we are prepared, and we will contribute to that discussion, of course. And of course, we are also very hopeful that there will be national commitments so that everybody will actually be involved in this and prepared to also be engaged in it. And we think that there really has to be an establishment of a pilot advisory board to be able to work with this together. We think it's necessary to really get technology infrastructure into the upcoming council conclusions, to really get it established. So during the Czech presidency, now, this fall, we will see council conclusions of research infrastructure, and in December, we will probably see conclusions on innovation. And you won't be surprised when I say that it's important that technology infrastructures are acknowledged in these documents, because that will actually give a push from the member states to the Commission, or the member states have to do that, because we really need to get this into these, because in order to be able to really get TI established. Of course, the best solution would be to get a council conclusion on technology infrastructure as well, because there's one from research infrastructure. And as I began to say, we need an ecosystem where these are equal parts, and they are both needed. From a rights perspective, you know, Swedish presidency is next year. Of course, we want to have this on the agenda together with the other RTOs, together with the EARTO. as you probably all know, if nothing has happened the last few hours or minutes, we don't still have a government in Sweden. But we are continuing to work on this because we really want to have it on the agenda. And I didn't say that in the beginning, that it was actually in Sweden that they started to do an overall scanning of the test beds that we had in Sweden. So we were really former, and that happened 6 years ago. So of course we have to have technology infrastructures on the agenda for the Swedish presidency. Another action that we can foresee is the TI dossier, a preparatory action with the aim to test new policy initiatives or preparing for the ground of adoption of future measures. So members of the European Parliament, they will make it possible to initiate innovative policies and fund them, of course. We have to try to be able to be innovative. Okay, we have been preparing quite a long time. But we have had a day today where everybody has been talking about technology infrastructure. I will say you, 5 years ago it wouldn't have happened. We were just a few ones that were talking about it. So finally, we can see that things are moving. And now it's time for the European institutions and for the member states to really take the last necessary steps so that we can be in the middle of the picture that Jacq showed, where the RTOs can contribute even more. It has to be in the structures, it has to be in the programs, it has to be funded. And we need to work together with a strategy to map, to see the white spots, and do it together with industry in order to understand their needs, because it's for them that we have these. And we are working together with the EARTO. We are doing this. So, I think it's perhaps like a marathon, and now we have only a few kilometers left before we are at our goal. So, I'm very, very hopeful for the future. And as you can see, you have done a lot of work during the last years that have been very fruitful. So we are continuing. And we will do what we can to get this on the table with the Swedish presidency next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia, and thank you for the great presentations in the morning. Now my great pleasure is to announce that we will have the coffee break here and time to a little bit stretch our legs and talk to colleagues. So be back maybe 11, and then people online, hopefully you have access also to good coffee. So see you soon back. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to restart for our second session. Please take your seat. So happy to see many of you, and I've learned that people who were stuck waiting planes were looking at the web streaming, and it looked good still, so I hope that those who are also connected at home or at work then have joined us back. So let's start. We have heard a lot about RTOs, their roles in the innovation ecosystem, about European policy and how we contribute. And this is a session where we contribute even further in the thinking. So, as you know, impact delivered is our motto. So, of course, we have an EARTO working group on impact. And today we have the chair of the working group. Marcel is with us from TNO. And he will introduce you the work of our working groups, the thinking we have on impact, and the latest work done with IDEA. So, please, Marcel, the floor is yours.
Does it work? Yes, it works. Good morning to you all. My name is Marcel de Heide. I'm a researcher for TNO. I'm mainly involved in economic research. And I also chair one of the working groups of EARTO, the one on impact. And basically, in practice, this working group of impact is a sort of a platform where we exchange best practices on how to capture the impact of RTOs in our respective innovation systems. We share reports, we share presentations, we share opinions on methodologies, etc., etc. And the methodologies which are just presented there, they cover a wide range area of different methodologies. We use very qualitative methodology, very quantitative input-output, econometric models, etc., etc. We cover everything from input to impact, basically, and we cover also not only economic impact, but also, let's say, the impact on society of the knowledge which is created by the respective RTOs. Why do we do this? We do this to illustrate the role and relevance of our RTOs in our respective innovation systems, such that we provide a basis for decision makers, for policy makers, but also as a basis to compare ourselves, to see how we perform in a way in comparison to other RTOs. And so what we did in the context of this working group, one of the things we did is we commissioned a study which was conducted by IDEA, which is a sort of a review of these different approaches, methodologies we use, we adopt. And the report is a sort of assessment of the different methodologies. And I would like to invite Miriam van Hoed to present the results of this study.
Yes, thank you, Marcel, for a kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here today and to be able to present to you the results of the review study that we did on impact assessments of RTOs. And so I'm now seeing if I can move the slides. Yes, okay. This review study is an important study to provide inputs on two important elements. On the one hand, methodologies. What is the state of the art? What is being done by RTOs at the moment in terms of impact assessment? And secondly, to provide also a broader context, a sort of a framework on results, methodologies that can be used by the working group of EARTO on impact to further contextualize other findings and other work. So we focus on methodologies, but also on results, and we do that for recent studies that were carried out by or for RTOs, and that focus on impact. We have developed an analytical framework for this review to structure the review, to be able to present those results also in a structural way. First, thinking about which kind of impacts do we want to analyze in this review. And we thought of economic, environmental, and societal impact. I think impact dimensions that link very closely to the policy priorities that were also discussed this morning. Environmental impact was in the studies often an integral part of the societal impact, so we decided to include it there and to have these two impact dimensions. Then to further structure and have a bit of relief in the review, we thought of a way to look at this review study of the different studies that we had to screen. And we saw that there was actually both in the economic and societal impact, either an internal perspective or an external perspective taken. This means you can look at the work and the activities of the RTO as an organization, the direct employment, the expenditures, and also looking at its own processes and functioning to improve also, for example, the carbon footprint, but also at an external perspective. What does an RTO mean for other companies, other organizations, for the society and economy at large? And we see that some studies focus more on one or the other. So we use this as a structure for the review. I will skip this for now, just say in brief that we reviewed 23 studies, of which 19 for the economic impact and 11 for the societal impact dimension. But I'll go immediately to the findings. Findings in terms of methodologies for the economic dimension. Looking at the internal perspective, as I mentioned, you have direct employment and resources of RTOs. You have the operational expenditures creating an impact in the economy. And for this, often descriptive indicators or analysis are used to describe this kind of effects. Also input-output modeling, so macroeconomic effects being modeled through these methods. Then when it comes to the external perspective, which is of course in a way also what we really want to look at, the impact on other organizations of the activities of the RTO, so the RD&I activities, but also other services. We heard about infrastructures, about acceleration, about business coaching. That kind of services also create an additional impact on businesses in the economies. And here we see a broader variety of methods. In a qualitative way, we see inputs from surveys, interviews, cases, literature reviews, often also combining different methodologies. On the quantitative side, we see, again, descriptive indicators, of course, but also more complicated or more complex methods that quantify economic effects in the broader economy, for example, client companies, and those concern, for example, elaborated macroeconomic modeling, regression analysis, input-output modeling. So I won't go into the details because it's very technical, but I think it's important to see what kind of methodologies are being used, and also that some require maybe different skills, other data sets, more resources to be implemented. Main takeaways, I think both for the economic and the societal side, main takeaways are that both qualitative and quantitative methods, both the internal and the external perspective complement each other. So that's very important, and we also often see that one study combines different methods in that sense. For the economic dimension specifically, I want to highlight that several studies help to open the black box. So some studies really focus on the quantification and really provide very credible and good results. But it's also important to be able to open the black box of how do these impacts come about? What are the mechanisms? What are the pathways? Through which sectors does this work? And so the combination of these different methodologies allows to open that black box. Another element that I want to mention here is that the methodologies are also very rigorously described and implemented. So we see that the hypotheses are transparent, potential issues are being addressed, and so that also the evidence coming out of those studies is building on rigorous or rigorously implemented methodologies. Then moving on to the societal impact side, here the internal perspective is looking at how the RTO for example, through sustainability reports on its own initiatives as an organization, carbon footprint measurement. So that's qualitative methods, often case-based, but also, of course, for the carbon footprint, there's more quantitative methods and data behind this. For the external perspective, we see studies that focus on the activities of the RTOs, of how the RTO works to improve society. On the other hand, there's also studies that really focus on transition. What is the role of an RTO in contributing to changes and transitions in the economy and society at large? So there's two ways of looking at this, different perspectives taken, and also here we see more qualitative approaches still, often case-based, also building on interviews and literature, but often case-based and anecdotal evidence. There's also some quantitative methods, for example, looking at how research output maps to SDG framework, the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's a mix here, but often still very qualitative. Main takeaways here, similar to the economic impact I mentioned, but very specific here. I think this also links to what was said this morning. The societal impact I mentioned is the dimension that allows to really highlight the complementary roles of RTOs. What was said before, the orchestrating role in transitions, the central role in the ecosystem and in the quadruple helix, building bridges between the different stakeholders. And this is what the societal impact dimension clearly demonstrates. In view of time, I will move on to the results overview. Because I think for the economic impact, we still see results of different nature, depending on the scope that is being taken and the methodologies that are being used. We see over time that these other services, the business coaching, acceleration, support, infrastructures, are really becoming more and more part also of economic impact assessments. And generally speaking, when we look at from a helicopter at all these studies, we see that there is evidence for a positive return on investment. And I've noted some ranges here that we see, and that we see from different studies, different methodologies, so that actually confirm each other. For example, on the investment, €1 subsidy generates a longer-term growth of GDP. You see the ranges here also, services being bought at RTOs generate an increase in the company value added or in the company sales. And of course, I think many of you are familiar with employment multiplier, fiscal multiplier, and also here we see quite similar ranges in the different studies. Sorry that it seems to be a line missing, but so there's also on the fiscal multiplier a range of, I think it's about 1.3, 3.7 fiscal return on investment towards governments. For the societal impact, I think I can be brief here because I touched upon many points, but I think it's important to mention or highlight again that there's many different perspectives, not one common framework to look at societal impact dimensions, which means that there's also a barrier to compare results, of course. But overall, we do see that indeed this dimension allows to highlight this orchestrating role of RTOs, and that is also considered beneficial in terms of society and impact for society. And what is important, I think, is something that we don't always realize enough, that this kind of studies allows to make this role explicit, to really pinpoint what the mechanisms are through which this works and what the outcomes are. Often, however, still anecdotal. So I think here more can be done also to build a more systemic evidence-based. That brings me to the lessons learned, and here I will only touch upon the first one because the others are already introduced. But one important finding that I also want to highlight was actually very nice to see. This morning there was also a reference to the OECD paper showing that the role of RTOs, or the way that role is perceived, is evolving. And so years ago, we would speak mainly of that economic contribution, building on the technological development and industry being innovation being brought to industry. But now, in recent years, the last decade, that attention for societal impact is also increasing, and more recently also a sort of advising role, advising, informing, cooperating with policies becoming more important in the perceptions. And this is something that we also see in impact assessment. So the impact assessments really follow this evolution, which is of course needed to be able to also demonstrate the outcomes of these different roles. And as a last slide, we see from the study that there's a lot of evidence out there. Bringing it together is very relevant to show, to pinpoint really some of these highlights. But more can be done. And I think in first instance, to broaden the evidence base also by broadening the range of RTOs that can do impact assessment, and building, thinking about how to build quantitative evidence and also how to combine methods. And what I said, open the black box, but also to be able to show those complementary roles of RTOs, the societal transition and policy impact. So I think those are pathways for the future that clearly came out of our review study. I'm happy to take questions. I know that Marcel has a few questions, but also if there's questions from the audience, I think we can still take them.
Many thanks, Miriam, for your presentation, but in my view, especially for the report, which provides a very good overview of what is actually possible in this context, what is possible to capture. And I really like the way it's written. It's a very well-written report, actually.
Thank you.
I have two questions in view of the time. The Commission recently, I think last week, they published a report, actually, which is a study. It's a study which which provides a basis for the evaluation of the framework programs, the coming frameworks programs, and the current one, basically. And it uses what is called key impact pathways to assess the impact. And my question to you would be, how could, let's say, our methodologies contribute to let's say, this framework, basically?
Mm-hmm. I had a look at the study, at the key impact pathways to monitor the framework program. And I think there's clear links and very interesting framework to look at. I think overall what we see is, well, first of all, the intention to have a unified conceptual framework to monitor the impact of the framework program is an interesting exercise in itself. And we see that the impact I mentioned that they include there, the scientific, societal, economic, technological, that we also see that in the RTOs impact assessment. So clearly there's a similar way of looking at the types of impacts and the dimensions that are relevant. However, indicators in that KIP framework are formulated to measure progress at the program level, not at the project or organization level. So in that way, I think the level of measurement is a bit different at the moment, though the framework also invites to think about more area-specific developments in that sense. So there's definitely room for inspiration. When it then comes to, when we look at it from the RTO review study, what we see there, I would say that I recognize a lot. So what RTOs are already demonstrating also fits quite well in certain of these key impact pathways. And I'm thinking in particular of the innovation-based growth and jobs. And I think there's also an impact pathway on the effects on policy priorities. So that reflects very well what we discussed here today. So I think what the review study can do is to show the state of art in terms of methodologies, indicators, what is already being measured, what kind of data is already being collected, so that it can, I think it can be a mutual inspiration and that it can be really a starting point for this kind of further discussions. Yeah. The links are clearly there, so.
Yes. I also want to ask you, because I know you're involved in many different evaluations of entities like RTOs, what could other, let's call them research performing organizations, learn from our different approaches?
Mm-hmm. I think we presented some lessons learned, and I think these lessons are relevant for all RTOs, those who participated and those who are maybe thinking of starting on impact assessment. So what we aim to do is really to have this overview to show the state of art, and it can definitely inspire RTOs that are thinking about impact assessment or that want to further develop their impact assessments to, it can inspire them on what kind of dimensions are being measured, what is that concretely entailing, what kind of indicators, also the internal, external perspective, so to think in that kind of framework. It can also inspire them on the methodologies and what kind of data are needed, what kind of skills are needed. And in that sense, it can really help to prepare and plan for impact assessment. What strategy do we want to take? How do we need to prepare our data? Can we do that in-house? Do we need to outsource that? And the different complexity of methodologies will inspire that. I think that's at the level of methodologies, but I think it's also a very relevant finding from the study that we do have these ranges of results, and that can be used by any RTO in their discussions with stakeholders as it is now, and they can, of course, complement it with their own evidence. And then maybe if I may, at a more global level, I also see the importance of what I mentioned on the evolving role of RTOs and how that is reflected in impact assessment. That can also give us hints about where to go with future development of methodologies and impact assessments, and to really start including that societal dimension and maybe also the policy-oriented dimension more.
We still have a room for a few questions from the audience. If not, I have a last question. No? A big issue at the moment is how to capture societal impact. And I know also that you have quite some experience with that. In my view, what lacks is a sort of a common basis, as you said, which allows for the comparison of results. Could you maybe somehow give an indication of what could be a direction in this context?
Yeah, I think in terms of societal impact, we see different practices, different perspectives, often also still qualitative. So I think for an individual RTO, I would also always start from thinking about what conceptual framework do I want to build, where do I think I will have an impact, what are my objectives, and how do I want to measure this in a qualitative or a more quantitative way, and to, in that way, also structure their own impact assessments. But of course, coming back to one of the points that I presented, there's still a lack of systemic evidence, there's still anecdotal evidence, so it would be beneficial from that point of view to build this more systemic evidence base, to also think about a more common conceptual framework. And that doesn't mean that there needs to be a one-size-fits-all methodology, but at least that there's a common way of thinking about this. And what we see, that evolution towards transition thinking and the role of RTOs in transition thinking is an important evolution in that regard. And building more systemic evidence will also really validate and confirm the insights that we have now, and maybe contradict and allow for further research on that, but to really make the evidence base stronger.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to thank you again very much.
Thank you.
And, well, thank you very much.
So thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Marcel. I think we have quite an interesting topics with impact, especially that now we have the midterm review, and you heard Anna this morning already presenting the kickoff, let's say, of all the discussion of the midterm. I will have two ladies. Please, ladies, I see you're waiting, so please come in, and I will introduce in the meantime. So we have this session now on the midterm, and we have heard this morning Anna mentioning few of the key events. And I think this is why the discussion on impact is so key, because we will have to come with the preparation of the program, and preparation of the program means you need to demonstrate that they are worth investing it, so we are coming with the budget negotiation after that. So I think all the discussion on the impact pathways of the current program, but also on the impact of the last investments, will be quite key for the next negotiation. What we see is that we have an agenda. The agenda has been given to us. We have a consultation coming up. The consultation is coming sometime November, December, probably until February, like Anna said. In that consultation, we will have 3 things to look at. The past program, what do we want with the future program, on the basis of the results of the first calls of this current program. We know that this is coming in the next month, so we already have to start thinking. That's why the 2 ladies with me are discussing this later on. What we also know, is that we have the Hungarian Presidency, and the Hungarian Presidency will be end of 2024, and there the Commission will start with staff working documents on the midterm review of Horizon Europe. This will follow a whole process. We will have a RAC opinion, probably also under the Hungarian Presidency. Then we'll launch the Polish Presidency of the European Union, and there will come, and I will drink a little bit, I talk too much today.
Let me do.
Thank you. Then will come, after the ERAC opinion, the European communication on the midterm review, and on that communication will come the usual Council conclusion. And this will probably under the Polish presidency early 2025. And when I say that, people are looking at me, oh, Miriam, we're already 24, 25, but we're in the call now, you know, work program, projects, success rates that we will discuss now with the 2 ladies I have with me. So the first one is Verena Venneman, the director of Brussels office of Fraunhofer. Welcome.
Hello.
And we have Dorte also with us from DTI, Dorte Dalsgaard, who is also the chair of our working group finances. And with the two ladies, I will pick up different type of outlook towards the midterm review, where we think that the thinking have to start. And especially we did quite some memo in the past on how EARTO members were doing into the framework program. We showed complexity of consortium. This is where we are in. Bringing industry. This is also what the RTOs are good in. But from what we heard all the speakers before, there's no surprises, I think, so much on this. So I think it's interesting to see a little bit what was the first experience of this new program in the first 2 years. So I will start with you, Verena.
Yes, thank you.
To look a little bit, you know, as managing the Brussels office of one of the biggest members of EARTO, you must have seen all part of the program. So it will be interesting to hear from you your first feeling on this program starts for the last 2 years.
Yes, so. Thank you. And hello, everybody. And I'm happy to be here. And it's a pity that Anna left already. I think we have already some points to make. And I wrote it down as not to forget at least the most important ones. I think for the time being, it's a good start. We had a good start of the Horizon Europe program. It's really from the topic-wise and the focus it puts on societal challenges. It's very good, actually. We are engaged in a lot of different topics, and we are, let's say, relatively satisfied at the moment. I think it's quite too early to tell that this will go on in the future, but we hope for and we do our best. But still, I think we have three big trends that we want to monitor carefully, at least for the time being. I think I don't tell anyone new things here. It's first of all the fight over the annual budget. We see that the Council and the European Parliament are discussing quite a lot on what will be the cuts for the next year. And of course, for us as RTO, it's challenging, and we are a bit worried that it's getting worse every year and year, though it's a reoccurring exercise, and we should not be too much worried. But I think with the big chunk this year of almost 660 million euros, it's quite a lot and quite worrisome for us. Then this goes together with the topic of new actions arising without fresh money. So, for example, the Bauhaus, it creates also instability. I know that we need flexibility in the program. We cannot start in 2021 and have everything done for the next 7 years. So we need to take up also new topics. But on the other hand, it creates, of course, instability, especially since it takes sometimes money which is not R&I related, so or to actions that are not directly related to R&I. And the one big thing for us, it's a big broader picture, is that all the simplification efforts the Commission is still doing, and we are welcoming, of course, but we've seen that a lot of those simplification efforts create much more complexity in the daily doing and the daily business of the RTOs. So, for example, it's about we will have less small-scale projects. The average budget of the projects has been risen quite significantly. This means that we have usually more partners within the project. We get new rules like lump sums. You will manage it later. So the coordination efforts grow a lot. And when you think about it, in the last, or in FP7, coordination was still 100% financed. Today is not. So this brings extra efforts for work that doesn't bring us any scientific value, let's say. Okay.
So quite some trends, complication, maybe not always simplifications, some budget discussion always, so I'm sure that the working group impact under the lead of Marcel will have some job to do for the next negotiation, and we know that economic crisis is now running with inflation and others, with a lot of funding already spent, so often research is being used as let's say, adjusting factor, and that's not always very good for us, I think, and for Europe in general. So thanks, you mentioned that. I think that's quite key. And if you're looking at, you know, the portfolio management of the program itself, so it used different instruments and others, did you see a difference compared to the past programs, or what's your take on the thinking for the programmation, let's say, of the program?
When we talk about this issue, we should clearly think of the TRL levels and combined with partnerships. So I think what we've seen in the past in the past months is that the low TRL projects have been shifted from the framework program more to become a responsibility also for the partnerships. And we know that this has been already in Horizon 2020 a bit tricky to keep the balance between low and mid and high TRL levels projects between framework program and the partnerships. So I think what we make sure is, and not leaving it just to the partnerships, but also to the responsibility of the Commission, is that we will that we have the TRL levels covered well in the framework program and in the partnerships, maybe pushing also the partnerships more to go to check lower TRL levels or to put lower TRL levels. But we see that also in connections to the budget negotiations, we are a bit concerned that also the low TRL level projects are a bit squeezed out when it comes to the budget negotiations, so that we tend to forget, or we just put them to the ERC, and the ERC is not so much focused on the collaborative projects, which are our main topic or main focus. Yeah. So actually, we think also another thing is that the RTOs should be more placed on the partnerships boards. We have seen that in some partnerships we have been, I wouldn't say, yeah, maybe we can say pushed out. So it's there we could make, with our experience, I think, a point to really check the whole TRL or project's value chain from low TRL to higher TRLs.
Okay, so the challenges of the portfolio management over a whole TRL scale is quite an issue, and maybe not let the partnership just do, but also check what's being done. Yeah. And the role for the EARTO members in the board of partnerships, I think that's clear. Mm-hmm. And something interesting also for portfolio, it's about these new missions, and we hear, oh, maybe even new missions, but are we even satisfied with those which are existing? How do you see that? We are mission-oriented organization as RTO, so how do you see that as being one, yeah? Mm. How do you look at this overall arching European mission?
Yes, it's also a topic for the portfolio management. It's a pity that the missions started quite delayed. So for the time being, I think we cannot really say that the impact is already 100% proven, and we still have to wait for it. I think two things that we are still a bit worried or concerned is that the governance towards the desired results actually is one big point, because I think one big question is, what if we see that the mission or the projects within the missions go into a direction where we say it's maybe it's a one-way street and we cannot get out? So who takes over the governance to really steer it back to the right track to get the desired results? So maybe we should really think of putting or make a clear assessment whether we could do certain things maybe better with other instruments like partnerships, for example, or CSAs. And I was saying that there will be this assessment also, and we should really be true to ourselves and think, is this correct or not? And the second thing is still something for us very important, what is financed? So definitely it's this question, research versus innovation. We know that the missions are supposed to create impact, and we really agree with that and welcome this, but it's a question whether some things may not be better financed than within structural funds, for example, because there maybe we have more options to fund those things that are going closer to market on a national level as well.
Yeah. So looking at maybe the focus and the concept of the mission, not always very clear, and what it finances, and and on what? Okay,
And
so
I think
some
also
challenges.
RTOs, I think a lot of RTOs have done their national experience as well. So with mission-oriented policies and research policies, and maybe it would be also a question of whether not more RTOs should be in the mission boards as well. We see there are not so many, so
yeah.
another.
And I think the OECD report on the mission-oriented policy gives a lot of examples of actually members of EARTO involved in driving mission at national level. So, okay, interesting take. I think we will have many things to say on the mission also during their assessment. Maybe if you have to be very short now, because I still want to have time with Dorta, what your wishes are for the next program. If you now thinking, what would the keywords that people should remember going back home?
Yes, so I put a couple of those. I think for the most important thing is we should think of ring-fence the budget for research and innovation. I think like with the agricultural or cohesion funds, they are quite untouchable. So I think it could be for the future, this could be done for the R&I budget as well. As I said, we should cover the whole R&I value chain or TRL chain, really thinking from small scale TRL, small, low TRL projects, and then see whether the larger validation, demo or deploy projects could be done in the partnerships or in the TEFs or in maybe also IPCIs, which of course are not so much for the RTOs, but closer to market as well. The simplification work should still be done, but maybe check carefully that it's not creating more complexity. And we have to work, I think, on framework conditions. Anna mentioned quite a few times that we are seeking for talents. So, and there was also an EARTO position paper lately on hurdles for researchers' mobilities. I think it's very important that this is not just an R&I issue, it's a social regulation issues that we need to cut down some regulations or make it more easy for researchers to really move within the European research area to freely move and work everywhere.
Thank you, Verena. So quite a few topics already. So even if it's 2 years, I think we still have you. So it will be interesting to work on the evaluation coming up so in November. So thanks a lot for that. Okay. I turn to Dorta. So framework conditions, we heard already mobility but of researcher, which is an issue, but we also have finances. In your job as the chair of our financial working groups, I think it's a very effective working group like the Impact Working Group for the last 10 years. So quite active in positioning, and I think there is quite some challenges coming up. What do you think the essential issues around the model grant agreement, which is the contract we sign when we get EU grants, because we are so non-European with us today. What do you think the big key points are from the financial aspect of this new program?
As I think you mentioned before, the devil is always in the details, and that's definitely what we spend time on in the financial group. But let me just start with the bigger pictures about RTOs in Horizon programs. I would have hoped that I could present our sector data from ECORDIS. Unfortunately, it turns out that they're not updated sufficiently, so we don't have our data, so I have to run on Horizon 2020 data here. But in numbers, we represent 1% of beneficiaries in Horizon 2020, but we do get 8% of the funding. And this is why the details are relatively important. And also, when you look at the numbers, RTOs are coordinating 33% of the projects. So we do have systems. And when we went from FP7 to Horizon 2020, a lot of changes were made already. And as Verena also said, projects are getting bigger, we're getting more partners in. So it's really important for us that we have a focus on continuation. We do have systems in place to run framework programs. And so flexibility, simplification, and continuation is key.
Yeah, so simplicity, but not simplification of rules for the European institution, but for beneficiaries. I think
Exactly.
sometimes we have to learn a new subtitle with the wording of simplification. And if you're looking at simplification, still we believe that this is quite key for bringing SMEs and other actors to the program. What do you think the big pitfalls are in terms of implementation for the financial aspects?
There are a number of pitfalls, and we haven't seen the annotated grant agreement yet. So we are actually implementing, we are starting projects, and we don't have the important details yet. But I can already see some of the pitfalls coming out. And let me start out, the personal cost calculation is extremely important for us as RTOs. And we already know that we're going to be recalculating from hours to days, and that's already could be complicated and could be error-prone. But RTOs participate in a lot of projects, not only EU projects, but also national and international projects all around. So we prefer simple options. We want one rate per person per year. Or even I heard rumors that the Commission might be introducing one rate for all. That could be nice. But when you do make things simpler, you might end up having too few options as well. And I think, finding that nice balance is important for us so that the program fits all kind of participants. I also put full cost up there when I was playing with the words. I just want to pay attention that when we went from FP7 to Horizon 2020, the full cost option was taken out. We get 25% in overhead now, and we know that that's how it is. I just wanted to call upon, I think I talk for many of the RTOs present here as well, that 25% overhead does not cover our cost. And this is why I'm also happy that internal invoicing has been introduced in Horizon Europe, or it was actually introduced in Horizon 2020. And also that we have the possibility and the acceptance of putting indirect cost in there and using allocation key. We heard about technology infrastructures all morning. I also heard that Pia Sandvik from RISE, she mentioned capital investment. Of course, capital investment is very important, but I must say as a financial person, operational cost is also very important when we talk technology infrastructure. Just take the current energy prices, everything running technology infrastructure needs energy, it has consumption, and we need the prices in there. Internal invoicing gives us the option if it works as we're hoping it's gonna do. That also leads me to the lengthy inflation that we're having right now, and I get a lot of emails from RTOs around, we applied for projects 2 years ago. We had no idea that we would have an inflation, so we will need flexibility. We'll do whatever we can do to mitigate the risk and how to get around, but there will be needing for flexibility in the program. So we also have the system and process audit. There are a few EARTO members who are part of the pilots. We follow it extremely closely. And here, when we have, the midterm review, these things, it's extremely important for us that the benefits for doing a system and process audit is totally clear. So, yeah. The devil is in the details, and when you're translating a model grant agreement into an annotated grant agreement, it's difficult, and some things can be lost in translation, which I put up there, and I think it's important that we get these details as much as possible covered.
So quite a lot of topics to be looked at on the financial side, on not only the operational from the project running, but on the financial side of it. And I think there is a hot topic now being discussed in Brussels, is the lump sums. Verena hinted to this one. We know that in the second work program running now, Commission has a target of 20% of the calls with lump sum, with the great targets that to have maybe 50% of all the projects being run in the program by lump sum at the end of the program. How do we see that?
I think if I was the European Commission, I would send out the money in lump sum as well. But that might not be the most efficient way to send out, to administrate the program. In the working group of financial experts, we participate in a lot of these pilots, and we follow it closely. And we make sure to every meeting to follow up where are we on the lump sum projects. At least one of the issues that we've been seeing when implementing these lump sum projects has been that we have a workload early on. We move the workload to the application phase and we do it to the grant preparation phases. And that's an extra cost for us because unfortunately we don't win all the projects that we apply for, and having hit rates for Horizon 2020 going between 15 and 20%, I think we need to be aware that the workload should not be moved on early. I also think we should have a full evaluation of the full life cycle of these projects, and that also goes to the impact. What we've seen, or at least the pilots that RTOs are participating in, that we don't have the flexibility that we used to have. Flexibility between participants, flexibility between work packages. So we don't know the full impact on the projects of lump sums. I must admit, I'm also a financial person, so I think time is a pretty good way of measuring progress. And I still believe strongly in this. So I think we will continue having time recording as a way of measuring progress. So yeah, my recommendation is still wait and improve the pilots. Let's continue, but there might also be, projects, the large collaboration projects in the pillar 2 in different pillars might not be good for lump sum projects.
Thank you, Doctor. I think it's quite clear. So quite some challenges to look at, both in terms of operation finances, but also on portfolio management of the whole program. Thank you very much, ladies. I think we leave the floor for the next round. Thank you very much. So now we're finishing our policy event. Quite a lot of topics for the midterm, portfolio management, impact, of course, all the different crises mentioned by François, where the RTOs will have a role to play, and complexity of the environment. So, but still, we do have impact. There is great things coming up. This is why we are going to launch now the Innovation Awards. So, Antti, the floor is yours.
and start looking at the things where really we see the impact of research, or we see the expected impact. So the Innovation Awards has been now done 14 times, or this is the 14th edition of the EARTO's Innovation Awards. In the years that we have been doing, we have been, if I give a little bit of statistics here, we have received 335 applications in total in all these years from 54 different RTOs in 23 countries. And we have had 63 winners from 17 RTOs in 14 countries. So quite good coverage. And we give the Innovation Awards in 2 categories. We have the Impact Delivered category, which, as the name implies, there we have already visible impact on the market, and we have proof points that it works. And then Impact Expected category, where the idea is still very early, but shows great promise. And this year we got 42 different applications, and before we show the different applications, couple of things and one presentation. But firstly, we have been blessed always with good juries. So also this year we have had a good external jury then going through all these applications and doing evaluation. So Panagopoulou from the Commission, Simon Evans from Innovate UK, Christian Ehler from the European Parliament, Jana Kolar from ESFRI, and then Juan Antonio Tebar from CDTI. So we can be extremely thankful for them on their work to evaluate. But before we go to the applications, we have a great honor of hearing from a true champion of European innovation. Christian Ehler, who's a member of the European Parliament, has promised to give a short presentation, so I'll hand over to Christian.
So, dear Mr. Vasara, dear Muriel, ladies and gentlemen, as it is in Brussels, you know, before you get to the fun part, you have a politician. This is the 14th time EARTO is putting a small selection of innovations of RTOs in the spotlight. And I don't, looking to my gray hair, I don't even want to remember how long I have the privilege to sit on that selection board. But I'm every time, first of all, honored, but secondly, really impressed what we see as candidates. So the selection obviously must be a selection, but it's really every time, every year, very impressive what had been brought forward as just candidates. I have the honor to be part of that jury, and I might reflect it a little bit later, but as you might have expected, if you asked a politician to give a speech on a prize, he might not start with that. He might reflect a little bit politics. So before we turn to the ceremony and announce this year's winners, allow me a short reflection on the state of innovation in Europe and the role of RTOs in Europe. You might have seen the European Commission recently published a new European Innovation Agenda. I mean, big headline. The agenda highlights that Europe has an opportunity to improve its competitiveness in the future by becoming a leader in deep tech innovation. And obviously, me then being one of the rapporteurs of the Parliament and the coordinator in the ITRE committee for a long time, we welcome this focus because I truly believe this is where European strength lies. The agenda focus on the whole series of initiatives, including 6 headlines. We never do it without headlines. Access to the finance for startups, smart regulation to foster innovation, supporting innovative ecosystem organizers, fostering and educating talent in Europe, and improving policy for deep tech startups. And while these address pressing issues, it's important to remember why deep tech is European strength, and I would like to reflect a little bit the overall political situation before I come to this strength, which relies on the deep embeddedness of knowledge and technology in the European nexus of science and industry. I think, and that is what I would like to address you and make you join the effort also politically to contribute to the discussion right now, is simply the fact it's fine to have a European innovation agenda. But I have to bluntly say, as long we are not going to substantially integrate the question of the innovation principle in regulation in Europe, we're going to fail. This is good to have. It's a nice new horse riding through the European RNA environment. But we should talk, what's the beef? And I mean, why are we here and why you are so relevant? And Muriel's, you know her voice, but it's not just loud, but it's also impressive in political terms. Why it's so relevant what we are talking about in general about the role of RTOs and the role of innovation is that we are upfront almost, I would say disruptive, even not transformative changes in the European society. I mean, if you look a little bit closer to what we are now rolling out in terms of Fit for 55, in these days, yet another building directive, then we go to air pollution and whatsoever. I mean, what we see is that the Green Deal, delivers on the green. And I don't want to emphasize on the question yes or no, we have to deliver on the 55 goals, that is undisputable. But it's interesting to see that for the first time, one after the other impact assessment on this regulation is sacked. And it is simply sacked by the question that impact assessments would ask for the question how to do. And a lot of explanations the Commission, but politics in general, I don't want to blame just the Commission in these days, is simply that we refer to you. We refer to the potential of innovation, we refer to our instruments, we refer to, the unforeseeable future. But what we are completely lacking is an idea, a structure, a funding, an embedded and integrated idea of the innovation principle in that kind of regulation. And to give you an example, we thought in parallel we would do the regulation for Fit for 55, and then we would come up with these 16, 17 ecosystems the Commission had been rightly defining instead of just referring to industrial sectors. But in each of them, the idea was there would be an innovation pathway, which would somehow indicate also, or giving planks for what we're going to do, how to implement, how to transfer that on the specificities of industrial sectors, how to transfer that to the specificities of the innovation potential or the innovation need in these specific sectors. And that